If you are looking for a new composition to try in the new set of teamfight tactics, or if you like free top 4s, this video is for you. What's up guys, this is Bunny Muffins. If you enjoy tier lists, composition guides, and TFT commentary, you are definitely missing out if you are not subscribed, so go ahead and hit the button if you are new to the channel. Divine Kayle brings a new flavor of Kayle back from set 3, so for all of my returning visitors, you are in for quite a treat. Kayle brings in a lot of consistency and flexibility, and I worked with DQA, a former rank 1 player, to get his insights on the composition as it is his go-to comp right now. First, we'll go over the base of the composition, the leveling pattern, and then the early, mid, and late game. We will also cover itemization, positioning, and alternatives to this composition. The baseline of your composition at level 8 will usually be a mix of Divines, Adepts, Executioners, and Mystics. The core 5 units are Kayle, Aurelia, Shen, Yuumi, and Kindred. In the other 3 slots, I often like to run Jax and Lee Sin to get up to 4 Divine, or do a mix of Siphoners such as Morgana and Swain. You could even use Nasus, who is also a Divine unit, or you could use Xayah if you hit her and if you have Executioner chosen. 4 Executioner is broken, but we can't get that every game. In the cases where you do not get Executioner chosen, DQA recommends only running 2 Executioner. He thinks that 3 Executioner is not correct. Onto the leveling pattern. In the early game, you want to level up to level 4 at stage 2-1, and then level up to level 5 at stage 2-5 if you can keep at least 10 gold. For level 6, you'll want to typically do that at stage 3-2, and if you can keep at least 3 gold, that would be ideal. For level 7, it's a little different. If you stay above 30 gold, you can level up at stage 3-5. This is right after the stage 3 carousel. And if not, go on to level 7, roll down on 4-1, and find some upgraded units. During this time, you'll have to decide if you are strong enough to go for a fast 8. If you are too weak, you'll have to roll down more on stage 4-1. If you are doing a fast 8, go ahead, level up on stage 4-5 if you are above 30 gold. If you are not doing a fast 8, go ahead, level up to 8 on 5-1 and do a full roll down there for your full comp. Once you are stabilized, you could potentially go for level 9 if you have high enough health. Now onto the items. We have the carousel item priority here. The 3 that we like most are Rod, Bow, and Glove. A lot of people think Bow is the most important, but Rod is actually great because you could build a lot of early game items with it, and Rod is really crucial for Kayle. In the early game, I like to slam all the team-oriented items such as Zeke's, Locket, and Chalice, and then later in the game, use all your AP items for Kayle and all your attack speed items for Kayle. Again, the reason why we like Rod more than Bow is because it's much easier to form a win streak early with the Rod items, because Locket, for example, is really strong right now. As for Kayle, ideally her items want to be a mix of attack speed, AP damage, and defense. Examples of good items include Rapid Fire Cannon, Gwynsu's, Hand of Justice, Rabadon's, Guardian Angel, Quicksilver Sash, Jeweled Gauntlet, Trap Claw, Giant Slayer, and Duelist Spatula. As you can see, there are a lot of different choices, so you are very flexible in terms of items. Now that we know what the composition is, let's get into some of the strengths and weaknesses. So the first strength of this comp is that it's very consistent. You could use any sort of items. There are a lot of different champions you could use, so there's no one set comp for this, which makes it playable in a lot of different games. The second strength is your level 8 board is very straightforward. You have the core 5 units that we talked about before, and then you just add whatever you get in your shop. Hopefully this will allow you to do something like a fast 9. Some of the weaknesses of this comp is that Kayle is very squishy. She can often get one-shot by champions like Aurelion Sol. And second, it is very difficult to position in some cases. Because of the way Kayle's range works, people are playing around with all sorts of positionings right now, and no one actually knows which one is truly the best. We already talked about the leveling structure for the early game, so I'm going to give you 2 compositions as like a base to look for in the early game. Keep in mind there are a lot of different ways to pivot into the Kayle comp, but I'm just giving you 2 popular examples here. In this first example, we see that we have Fiora and Jax as our duelist frontline, but we also get Enlightened with Janna, and then Teemo and Nidalee are our sharpshooters for our damage. In the second example, we have Nidalee and Teemo as our damage, and then a frontline of Wukong, Garen, and Vi, giving us Vanguard and Warlord synergy. If you haven't noticed yet, all champions that we mentioned so far are not in the final composition, so you could go ahead, take any of these chosens, and itemize them and use them as item holders because we're going to sell them off later. In the mid game, Kayle is a comp that only requires 2 4-cost units to work, and those are Kayle and Shen. As such, in the early game, the goal is to preserve as much HP as possible, even if it means sacrificing some economy. Pushing levels aggressively and collecting divines while playing the strongest board is key. From a high gold opener, it becomes significantly easier to push levels while maintaining a good economy. However, when you have low gold, if you feel weak, do not be afraid to level and roll on stage 3-2 for upgraded units, as you'll be unable to do a fast state anyways. For example, you could roll down on stage 3-2 at level 6 to either 20 gold or 10 gold. Here's a sample board for stage 3. We have Kindred as our item holder, Fiora holding all the support items, and then we have a front line for Jax and Aurelia. Keep in mind, Kindred is in our final composition, so you might have to sell her or use something like the magnetic remover from the lantern. For the late game, I'm going to give you guys 3 different example team compositions. The first one here is the Dream. This one is with 4 Executioner with Kayle, as you see that she's in the backline with Xayah and Kindred right next to her. We have our Yuumi to the side and then Azir in the opposite corner, and then we have front lines of 2 Vanguards and Aurelia and Shen. Keep in mind, Sejuani and Aatrox, they're great to use, so if you get them, use them, but they could be replaced with a lot of different things, which we'll see in the other examples. And you could use and mix and match all of these different types of compositions we're about to show you. As for item holder for Chalice of Harmony or Zeke's Herald, DQA likes to use either Kindred or Yuumi. It doesn't really matter who, you just put it on whoever you 2-star first. So if you get a 2-star Yuumi first, go ahead, drop it on her. If not, drop it on Kindred. In this next example, we show a left side positioning with Yuumi in the back, Kayle in the second row, and then Kindred right next to her, and then we have a similar front line to what we had before with Azir in the corner. In this last one, we have the 4 Divine Kayle comp with Lee Sin and Jax added in, and we also have Siphoner from Swain and Morgana. We put Kayle in the opposite corner of our tanks, and then Morgana in the opposite bottom left corner, and if we do run a Morgana, a Morello is nice to use on her. Keep in mind there are many other variations to this build. If you're facing a lot of magic damage, something that might be worth trying is adding in like 4 Mystic. For positioning, make sure Kayle is safe in either a cubby or the corner depending on the matchup. Against Aurelion Sol, I like to put Kayle more towards the middle, having bait units in each corner, generally with an RFC. However, against most matchups, Kayle is in the bottom right corner, and that typically has worked well for me in the past. Your core frontline should always be Shen and Aurelia, but Jax and Lee Sin can also be thrown in, like in some of the examples above. If you are someone who's struggling to beat this composition, here are 2 counters to the Kayle comp. Assassins do really well against Kayle if they are able to jump on her, but a way to counter this counter, so to speak, is to do a full surround on your Kayle, and oftentimes the enemy assassins cannot get to her. Another counter is Aurelion Sol, and Aurelion Sol does really well into Kayle because when you put your Kayle in one corner, Aurelion Sol always targets his furthest unit away from him, and he'll pretty much always hit your Kayle, and with a jeweled gauntlet, he can often one-shot Kayle because Kayle does not have much health. A way to make this counter matchup a little easier is to position your Kayle in the middle in the back. That way, Aurelion Sol doesn't really know who to target and can't hit your entire team. Other random tips to keep in mind is that Duelist Kayle is super strong, and if you put that on him, it's pretty much like a built-in Rage Blade, and then when you add in Jax and Lee Sin, you almost have 4 Duelists, and then she'll get tons of attack speed there. Jeweled Gauntlet is also an underrated item on Kayle because it increases critical strike damage, so it synergizes extremely well with the Executioner buff, which allows Kayle to always crit when enemies are below a certain amount of health. Last tip that we have here, we mentioned it before, but keep in mind, the best composition is having 4 Executioner and then having 2 Executioner, and then always avoid using 3 Executioner. A lot of people think they need to be playing as many Executioners as possible, but DQA has assured me that 3 Executioner is pretty much always a bait. Thanks so much for checking out our Kayle guide. Kayle is super strong in the meta right now, and I highly recommend playing her as often as you can. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead, hit the like down below, and leave some comments after you play this composition or after you watch the video. Let me know how it goes for you guys. Let me know if there's some secret text that you guys discovered on your own. But apart from that, I'm hoping to get a lot of other different players onto the channel in order to help all of us get a little better at TFT. So if you guys have any suggestions of who you want to see next on the show, you can leave that in the comments below too. But thanks so much to DQA for making this Divine Kayle guide. Again, you guys can all see this on my website at bunnymuffins.lol. where I'm going to be posting a ton of different stuff that pretty much can only be seen on my site. But yeah, go and check out DQA stuff as well. He streams at twitch.tv/DQA_TFT, and he does offer coaching as well. So go ahead, hit him up if you guys are interested in that. I'll leave all the details in the description below. But apart from that, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.